Hi, Irene. Hi, Carlos.
Hi, Chris.
How are you doing, Irene?
Um, I'm absolutely marvelous. My
No,
face full of food. Sorry.
I'm sorry.
It's dinner time.
It is. It's right smack dab.
Mm, long time no see. We have missed you.
I know. I've missed you all too. Um, yeah, I would love to grab coffee again soon, actually. Just hear how
Cool.
things are going.
Yeah, call it. Tell us whenever you're ready.
Okay,
We're
perfect.
probably more flexible than you are.
Sometimes I get a little caught up. There's my. Hi, Jessica.
Hi, everyone.
Yo, hello. We're just going to give folks a few more minutes to join, see if some other people hop on here before getting started. All right, it is 6:04, so just to respect everybody's time, we'll get started with the program this evening. With that, let's hand it over to Francisco to do the interpretation announcement.
Good afternoon, everyone. As with most meetings organized by DOTI, interpretation is offered as part of its efforts to reach to as wide a segment of the community as possible. And if you have not gotten a chance to use that feature before, please click on the interpretation icon and select the language of your choice. Buenas tardes a todos, bienvenidos a esta reunión. Como la mayoría de reuniones que organiza Dori, se ofrece interpretación al español. Si no ha tenido la oportunidad de utilizar este servicio antes, por favor, pulse el icono de la interpretación en la parte inferior derecha de su pantalla, el globito, y seleccione el idioma de su preferencia. Thank you, Chris.
Thanks, Francisco. All right, well, welcome everybody to the West Area Community Advisory Group meeting. It is April 4th, 2024. And as a reminder, my name is Chris Callanan, and I'm with the Denver Department of Transportation and Infrastructure's Office of Community and Business Engagement. It's a little bit of a mouthful. And the West Area Community Advisory Group is really a platform to share back and forth between project managers and other members of project teams and community members in the West area on projects that are active, meaning that they are kind of in the planning, design, or implementation phase of their life cycle. And today, next slide, Sherry, we have a few updates to talk to you about regarding projects that are in the works. So first, we'll go to West Colfax Pedestrian Crossing and Transit Improvement Project for some updates from the construction team. And then we'll go over to give some updates on the Denver Connector, some exciting updates. And then we'll move to Federal Boulevard Transit Speed and Reliability Improvement Project. And finally, the Stewart Street Storm Improvement Project, which is also in construction and has some updates to share with this group. With that, I'll hand it over to Bailey to introduce herself and get started with those updates for the West Colfax project.
Thank you, Chris. And hi, everyone. Thanks for joining me tonight. I may look familiar. I was at the last CAG meeting for the West Area group talking about this very same project. I'm sure as many of you know, we've had a little bit of a change since our last meeting, which I'm happy to provide the renderings for at tonight's meeting. So let's get started. Next slide, Sherry. Since we've kind of gone over the background of this project before, I'm going to speed through some of the pre-construction portion. So obviously the major priority here on this project is to improve overall safety, both pedestrians and reliability throughout the corridor, which obviously includes motorists as well. Next slide. So West Colfax, specifically this area between Sheridan Boulevard and Irving Street, was identified as one of the high injury corridors as a part of the Vision Zero action plan that Denver is heading, trying to lower those serious injuries and fatality rates down to 0 by 2023. So some things that this project was designed specifically to do is to reduce speeds, reduce conflicts between the pedestrians and the vehicles, shorten the distance for pedestrians at crossings, improve visibility, and create transit reliability to reduce delays. Next slide. So on the left, you'll see some safety treatments that were completed prior to our active construction project. So kind of timing those pedestrian signals in between Sheridan and Lowell. They also reduced the traffic signals to reduce speeding along the corridor. They added those driver feedback signs at 4 different locations, as well as fully reduced the speed to 30 miles an hour along the corridor. So those have already been completed by Dottie. And elements that our project is currently implementing are we're installing 19 intersections. We are still installing a pedestrian bulb out. So I think there's about 60 total. And those will all be equipped with new ADA compliant ramps throughout the corridor. We will have 8 new medians installed that will be landscaped. And they will also provide that refuge in between crossing for those pedestrians. So each of the medians actually have a mid block. They have a pedestrian crossing along them. We will be eliminating a lot of left turn conflicts, which were kind of the highest danger out there before. We're going to create some bus bulb outs, and that just creates a safer waiting area and safer boarding experience for those transit riders. And then our medians will be still open at Varane and Lowell to accommodate those future signals. And then also widening some sidewalks on the south side to make those as well ADA compliant. Next slide. So this is our most up-to-date rendering right there in front of the Everett. So it does show those landscaped medians, and it also shows in between those medians that pedestrian cross zone, which kind of just gives people as they're crossing. We've all driven West Colfax. We know people are not crossing where they're supposed to be. So it gives them that refuge that they don't have now as they're crossing, ability to stop, look the next direction, and then cross safely. Next slide. So this is just kind of to explain those safety elements that we're installing. So those new pedestrian bulb outs you can see there, they narrow the distance for pedestrians crossing. Well, I can see the question there. I'll answer it right at the end, Irene. So the new pedestrian bulb outs will actually narrow the roadway, which creates a less of an area for those pedestrians to cross. It'll slow the turning speeds of vehicles just because it changes the turn radius for those motorists coming from Colfax or vice versa. It increases visibility, and that's just because of the way that the corner is constructed. It expands the sidewalk, so those narrowed sidewalks now where there's not a lot of like waiting area, those will be bigger, and then obviously that ADA compliance is a big portion of it. Now down to the median refuge. And Irene, I do know that at some of them it has that cross and some of them it doesn't. So it's about 50-50, and I can send you the exact ones if you'd like to know. But those median refuge islands, they are narrowing the roadway, so they're providing an actual hard surface in the middle of the road that really discourages any head-on-head issues, that sort of thing. It provides additional places, obviously, to cross mid-block and then also mid-roadway. It gives you that time to pause. And then the biggest safety aspect I personally think on this project is removing those left-turning conflicts, left-turning vehicle on vehicle conflicts, left-turning pedestrian on vehicle conflicts. Just removing those turn movements entirely really creates a safer environment for everyone. Just so everyone can have this, so you can scan this QR code, or you can also go to our website. All of this is available. We have mock-ups, kind of like aerials of all of the blocks. It's over like 21 blocks. So check them out, have it more detailed to where you access, and you can look at those improvements that you're getting on your block. Next slide. So this is our phasing schedule. We obviously started construction about 2 months ago now. We are fully opened up on the north side of the project. We are already completing our first, I believe it's 3 bulb outs, as well as some underground drainage work on the northwest side of the corridor right now. So we're going to continue with that. Moving along the north side for the first portion, creating those, we're going to be closing street by street and completing that whole street at a time, opening it up with those new pedestrian bulb outs. We will do that along the north side, along the south side, and then beginning of next year, we will be doing the middle. So that is where we will rip up the roadway, hopefully not discover old trolley tracks, and be able to install those new medians. And then next year, once the weather obviously improves, just for those paving operations, we'll be milling and paving brand new asphalt, and you will have a beautiful, smooth new roadway. And then lastly, I agree. And then lastly, our anticipated impact. So I just wanted to give you guys like a couple of updates and heads up about some upcoming traffic impacts that you may experience. So during the day on off-peak hours, kind of in between that morning rush hour and before that evening rush hour picks up, we do have single lane closures. And that's really just to create like a safety barrier while we do work on the right-hand lanes or on the sidewalk for our crews to get in and out. As I said, we are closing neighboring streets one at a time. So there's some easy detours, and that just allows us to get big chunks done at a time. Sidewalk closures go hand in hand with those neighborhood street closures. We just want to make sure pedestrians are staying out of the work zone. Obviously, it's not a safe place to be. Business access, we have been working continuously with the businesses along West Colfax to make sure they are impacted as little as possible. So there are some small access changes. You may have to walk around some of our closures, that sort of thing, but all businesses will be accessible throughout the duration of the project. And then lastly, which will be coming up in the next couple of weeks, hopefully, we will be restricting left turns pretty much throughout the corridor. And that one will pretty much create an incredibly safe corridor. And it also allows us to kind of move lanes around to allow us to keep as much traffic flowing as we can while conducting our work, and it will actually expedite our construction schedule a little bit, which is super helpful with the past weather we've gotten in the past couple of weeks. And then just looking forward, we want to make sure we have as expedited schedule as possible. And then lastly, if you guys have any questions, comments, concerns, please go ahead and shoot me an email there. That's connected straight to me and the project team. Or you can call and leave us a voicemail. Even if you just have a question, what is this corner going to look like? Feel free to call us. We are happy to talk. We are happy to discuss with you. And then if you do drive the corridor frequently, which I know a lot of you do, I highly suggest that you guys sign up for those project email updates. I don't spam you, I promise. I only send them when we're doing something important, like removing those left turns, anything like that. So I highly encourage you to sign up for those. And then last thing, all of this is also available on our website. So if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out. Chris, I'm going to take Irene's question.
Hi. Thanks. Yeah, I was just wondering if thank you. The 14th, is there anything going to be done with the adjacent streets like 14th and 17th? So if you're going to be deleting the left turn lanes, that's going to push a lot of traffic onto 14th definitely, and 17th is already super congested, and then we've already got, you know, the speed limit on 13th is apparently 30, the same as Colfax, and we've already had numerous, you know, issues with that when there's been accidents on Colfax. So I'm wondering, you know, and in our West area plan, we've got 14th is supposed to be, you know, a bikeway and things like that. So I'm asking what's happening with the adjacent street. It would be a really good time to address that as well.
That's a good thought. I personally don't know of any future development, but I am just a part of the active construction team. But I can ask around and have our Denver engineers that kind of have a future plan and see what their details are.
Yeah, we've been asking for that, but you know, in addition to this getting started. So
absolutely, I feel you. Anyone else have anything? Oh, Chris, are you back on?
I am back on. Can you hear me?
Yes,
Okay.
we can hear you now.
Any other questions for Bailey on West Colfax? All right, let's move to the next portion of the presentation. So I'm going to hand it over to Myla from our Transportation and Mobility Planning Division to talk about the Denver Connector and some exciting announcements. Mai, over to you.
Thanks, Chris. Hi, everyone. My name is Myla, Senior City Planner with Denver Dottie. I am in Dottie's Planning Division. So and I'm here to talk to you about the Denver Connector, which is an exciting new free service that we'll be providing in the Southwest Denver area. Next slide. So what is the Denver Connector? And it's a microtransit service, and microtransit works largely like, say, Uber or Lyft, but choosing the shared option. So it's app-based. You call it in before, right when you need it. It's on demand, and it fills the gap that the larger transit system leaves. So it works in between those gaps to provide services to areas that don't have a great connection to transit. And in the city of Denver, we have branded our microtransit service as the Denver Connector, which is the picture you see on the right. And those are typically what our vehicles look like. And I'll be talking about the history of the Denver Connector program in the next slide. So we started in using this map in areas of transportation equity, high need areas. so the program kicked off in the Montbello area first in October 2021 to serve local neighborhood destinations and transit stations. And after a successful year and a high demand for the service, the city extended this pilot for another 2 years. And as part of that extension, the city also expanded to the GES or Globel and El Rio Estancia neighborhoods, which is in that northernmost part of the map you see that is lit up in purple. And just to reiterate, all rides are always free. They run on weekdays from 6 to 8 p.m. And right now, the service provides on-demand trips anywhere within these two service areas. But we will be expanding now into the West Denver area because, as you can see in the map, that area has a lot of purple in it. In the next slide, I'll talk about how we're using data like where transit deserts are to help us refine where to focus on our new service area. So this is just one type of data point that we'll be using to help us refine our service area. And the next slide, I'll talk a little bit about process. So we'll be kicking off the project soon with a series of focus groups from community members who live in the neighborhood. And we'll also be providing council office briefings on the project and letting the council offices give their input. We'll be analyzing data and gathering input from people who live in the areas, and we'll be using this service. And we'll be releasing a survey to gather input from the community more broadly. So with all those layers of information, we'll be using that to refine the service area further and further and iterate and go back and forth until we can finally launch and start our microtransit service in October and latest November of this year. And that's all for me. The next slide has all my contact info if you're interested in hearing more about this project.
Thanks, Mai. And just to kind of add a little context for folks on this call from my experience, I also work and run a community advisory group in the Globeville and Elyria Swansea neighborhoods where the Denver connector expanded in the last few years as well. And it's been amazing to see how much the community loves and utilizes the resource to get where they need to go. Even when I'm holding kind of public meetings in person, folks are always talking about using the Denver connector to get to the meeting location or take it home. So for another area of the city to be kind of receiving the service is a really exciting announcement, and wanted to make sure to bring that news to the CAG here in the West area. We will be inviting Mai back in future CAG meetings to share kind of some updates as progress moves forward on planning for the service area and what the service will look like in the West area of town. So just wanted to kind of highlight how amazing this service is and how exciting it is to have it come to the West area where there's very clearly some transportation need from an equity perspective. So with that, wanted to open it up for any questions that folks might have about the Denver connector or this planning process right now. All right, well, that must just mean that Mai included all of the really important information at this stage, so that's exciting. Let's hand it over to Rolando Melgoza to talk about the Federal Boulevard Transit and Reliability Improvement Project. Go ahead, Rolando.
Thank you, Chris. And thank you to all the other presenters for the information this evening. It's great. Hi, everyone. My name is Rolando. I am a community designer with Dottie, and today I wanted to say a couple of things about the Federal Boulevard Transit and Reliability Improvement Project. So this project focuses on addressing the speeds of the buses, how we rely on them to get us to our schools, to our jobs, our destinations. Next slide, please, Sherry. Okay, so why did we choose Federal Boulevard for this? So just so we know, this isn't a project that is specifically like a type of bus or anything like that. This is on how can we move the buses up and down Federal throughout the city limits here in Denver. And Federal was chosen because it has the second highest ridership of any transit route in Denver, but it also has the highest transit delay of any route in Denver. It was identified as a transit priority corridor by Denver Moves Transit, and it serves communities that often lack access to other modes of transportation. So connecting those essential workers and lower income workers to jobs on the corridor. Next slide, please. So how do we do this? How do we increase or better the times on these buses? So we have a couple of tools that we use, and I'll mention several of them. First of all is traffic signal priority. So this is giving you may have seen some of the devices that are on the mast arms and everything to give some of the buses priority through there. So right now the city has this transit traffic signal priority at 46 signals along the corridor. Another way that we can do this is by bus bypass lanes. These are short segments where the buses have their own lane to get around those longer queues at some of the intersections. And this project would add about a half mile of bus bypass lanes. So it's important to know that these bypass lanes, so it's not that the entire stretch of Federal is getting an additional lane. It's only at those key intersections that have been identified to have those long queues that can then be traced back to the reason why the bus is late. Also, bus stop balancing. So 19 bus stops have been identified for either relocation or removal. Sometimes the destinations change. Sometimes what was once a trip generator is no longer there. Sometimes it is added. So it's a good exercise to go back through there and see where the bus stops should be versus where they have been in the past. Queue jumps also. This is what works with also those bus bypass lanes. So there are advanced green signal to move through the intersection before the general traffic, and the queue jumps have been identified for 7 of the intersections. Also, starting from the very first thing that we do, which is getting to that bus stop, right? So that's through sidewalk improvement. So identifying where those gaps are in the sidewalk network, maybe some of the sidewalks that don't meet ADA standards, to be able to fix that. And let's go to the next slide. And also I see in the chat, I saw Heidi pop up the question. So I'm going to multitask and do both of those.
Yeah,
Okay.
really quick.
Okay.
Heidi's question is, how does this work with the bus rapid transit planning on Federal Boulevard?
Okay, thank you, Chris, for reading that, and thank you, Heidi, for the question. So this is the first step. This is the first step in the BRT, and we are working with CDOT to make sure that we coordinate the efforts. As far as scheduling this project here, is what you will see first before the BRT, which is still a couple of years away, not a couple of years away from the study or anything. We know that study is moving moving along, but before we start seeing the BRT buses, that's still a couple of years away. But so I did mention the different tools here and where those locations are. I'm sure, like most people, a map is very useful. So I did want to direct everyone to 2 different places. One is on the website here using the QR code. So you can see a map showing the locations of where those tools will be used, as well as for every one of those tools, we do have an infographic listed on there, so you can get into the details of how each of those tools work. And then also wanted to point out that if you have any super technical questions about this project, about the rollout, Matthew Schwint is your guy. He's the one with knowledge of all things transit speed and reliability.
Thanks, Rolando. And I see another kind of follow-up question from Heidi, and I think I'll be able to address it, but will outreach also be coordinated between the Federal Boulevard Transit Speed and Reliability Improvement Project and the Bus Rapid Transit project that is upcoming? And the answer is yes. Rolando and I met with the project manager for the BRT a couple of months back now to kind of talk through what that looks like. And we do have an invitation to that project team to come and share updates about the federal BRT project with the West Area Community Advisory Group, so that folks here attending this meeting are kind of kept up to speed if they're not kind of independently involved in CDOT's process with the Bus Rapid Transit project implementation. So thanks, Heidi. Any other questions from folks on the call about the Federal Boulevard Transit Speed and Reliability Improvement Project? Carlos, in the chat, you're asking, do you know which bus stop locations will be relocated?
Yeah, thank you, Carlos, for that question. We do have a map here. If you scan the QR code, we have some relocation identified on the map there. And I would encourage you also, if you want to either reach out to the project manager, or if you want to reach out to either Chris or to me to make that connection, that works fine. So we can, if there's one specifically that you're asking about, we can look into that for you.
And Carlos, I'm doing my best to try to find a direct link to that map of improvements, just so that I can put that in the chat for you to look at and other participants. Here is that link. Any other questions from folks on the line? Not. Just wanted to highlight how important these improvements are for Federal Boulevard. I think everyone knows here that it is a really important corridor that has quite a few opportunities to improve safety for folks who are transiting along it, whether or not they're walking or driving or taking the bus. So this is the first in kind of a series of planned improvements to help move our corridors forward with safety goals for the department. Heidi, I see your hands raised.
Oh,
go ahead.
Yes, sorry. I thought I don't know what's going on with this link. Yeah, so so it sounds like there's going to be city improvements to Federal Boulevard with this, and then followed behind by the CDOT BRT project. So I'm just wondering, is this being used as kind of a pilot to see how BRT can act? And if so, it would seem that community engagement sooner the better to be involved in this. I just want to kind of understand how this is going to be, what conversations you've had with, I assume, Ryan Knowles, and because the community hasn't really been invited or involved into these discussions yet. And I think that that's a really important piece, is we're just going to have one whack with this federal money for BRT. And I'd really like to get on top of it so that we are able to address community needs before we're at mostly build out.
Yeah, Rolando, do you want to respond?
Yeah. So these are two separate projects that are talking to each other. The first public outreach for this project, not the BRT one, was back in 2021. So it's been a while that this project has been in the works. The BRT outreach, separate project, that one has started the community outreach. So I hope people are signed up for when those meetings are taking place. If I recall correctly, Chris, when we were meeting with CDOT, they had different meetings, different locations, since BRT, that project stretches outside of the city limits, right? It's all the way down from Englewood all the way up to Westminster, up in Adams County, right?
Yeah. Yeah, that's right. There's quite a few segments along the Federal Boulevard corridor that'll get these improvements. And what happens when those projects are kind of called multi-jurisdictional projects, which is kind of jargony, but basically along this corridor, because it is a state highway, it does pass through a lot of different municipalities and counties along its way. So we're certainly coordinating community engagement efforts specifically for the segment in the West Area Community Advisory Group locations. But of course, there will be kind of additional considerations above and beyond this segment of the corridor. And I will drop a link in the chat to the CDOT project page so that folks can go there and learn a little bit more about what community engagement looks like kind of beyond the specific West Area segment and more along the entire corridor. So, but definitely hear you, Heidi. I think it is really important to be thinking about community engagement, because regardless of whether or not CDOT is implementing a project or Dottie is implementing the project, we're definitely aware and kind of working towards intentionally coordinating community engagement so that it makes a lot more sense to the public what's happening.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that, because 2021, I mean, we're in 2024. So, I mean, a lot. If that was the one meeting that maybe we all missed, that doesn't, I mean, we should, yeah, be talking.
Yeah, thank you, Heidi. And Irene, I see you were having the same questions. If you visit the project website, so you have access to all those maps, everything that I mentioned, but also I just went through it and found some meeting summaries from public outreach in November 2021 and also in August 2023. So those meeting summaries are available for you to take a look at.
All right. Any other questions for this project right now?
I don't have a question, but I just have a comment. Like, so
Yeah.
we have our R&O meetings. I know you guys are aware of those. I think it would be, it would really be beneficial to our community, and I'm just speaking for West Colfax, if you guys, came to those and presented whenever there's new information. And, I think it would be really helpful. And then I do have a question about the CAG in general. So is this, so it stands for Community Advisory Group. I'm just curious, is the mission, is it that the community is engaged in advising Dottie, or is it the other way around? Because I'm wondering how the priorities are being set. How are we, leading this? Is it Dottie that's leading it? or is the community? Because from my perspective, if it's not the community, then I'm kind of done, you know. I don't want to keep coming to these meetings and banging my head up against the wall and emailing you guys and not getting, you know, and not getting responses and not getting anywhere, or getting responses that are talking down to me. So these are, you know, things that you know, it's just, I just want to know, like, what's the mission of these meetings? Is it the community advising, or is it top down or bottom up?
Yeah, and I don't think it's either or. I do think that it's kind of a two-way process to answer that like specific question. I do think that it is worth maybe revisiting how the CAG meetings are kind of programmed right now. And we were planning on doing that back in January, and ultimately some of the meeting time was taken up on kind of more pressing matters. But it's a good reminder that maybe at our next meeting, would it be helpful to have more of a conversation, an open conversation about that CAG structure and how things are working? Yeah. Yeah, because definitely here, yeah, and this is community advisory groups are a newer initiative of Dottie, so certainly want to make sure that we're staying in contact and communication and kind of checking in regularly on how it's working. So heard, and I'll build that into the next CAG agenda.
Yeah, I
Go
think
ahead,
if I
Heidi.
can jump in and just kind of like, that's been a question I've had since Mrs. Heidi from the beginning of these meetings, because it does feel very top down, whether that's the intent or not. And you know, October would have been a great time to talk about pressing issues that came up in January or February, and that meeting was canceled because there was nothing for Dottie to present to us, and it would appear that there's plenty. And I think if we can add a component where the communities that are involved in the CAG can add to the agenda so that we can be more integrated. It's just, you know, like this reliability improvement project, it's just like, oh, we had a meeting back in August. I think there needs to be an appreciation of how many meetings we are asked to attend, how many surveys we are asked to answer, and you know, none of this happens without community engagement. The city can't function without that, and it's a requirement for a lot of the grants and monies that the city receives. And we don't want to be a box. So I really appreciate that you mentioning that, you know, that we can relook at this, and I would love to have this, because I agree with Irene 100% that, like, I have so much time, and we're volunteers, and if we have to make priorities, this isn't going to be one of them if we're not going to be respected in the process. So thank you.
Yeah. Okay. That sounds like a good plan to revisit the conversation and kind of how the CAG is functioning at our next meeting. So we can kind of move on to our next agenda item for now, but do really appreciate you bringing that up. Next, we have a brief update on the Stewart Street Storm Improvement Project, which is in construction, and we heard about that construction back in January of 2024. So just wanting to come back with a few updates. I'm gonna share those updates because I just put together a few slides on the topic, but Ryan Lewis from the project team is also on the line. So Ryan, definitely feel free to chime in if I'm missing anything, or if you can kind of make what I'm saying a little bit more accurate. So first of all, this graphic shows from the January presentation, shows kind of the overall timeline for this project. And as a reminder, the project is really intended to reduce flooding issues on West Colfax by diverting flows from Colfax to Dry Gulch. And in addition to the water diversion, the improvements along Stewart Street include bringing curb and gutter, accessibility ramps, and sidewalks up to modern standards. So it's a little bit of a stormwater project with some of those mobility and connectivity improvements built in.
Chris, can I just
Go ahead, Ryan.
jump in here real quick to say that as of a couple days ago, the work hours are different. So extending, so we're ahead of it's been pretty, a lot has happened to impact the lives of the people on Stewart. So they're extending 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. in an attempt to kind of speed up a little bit. So just noting we've changed that graphic on the website.
Yeah, great clarification. And I was definitely going to touch on that because I noticed that as well. So for folks who are listening to this, yeah, the graphic on the screen is not necessarily accurate. The work hours have expanded from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. like Ryan mentioned. And Heidi, do you have a question related to this slide?
No, I'm going to lower my hand. Thank you.
Okay, yeah.
And
No problem at
just
all.
one more ad, there's also occasional Saturday work, Dottie hours 8 to 5.
Okay, good to know. Next slide, Sherry. Yeah, and on that, I think one of the most exciting updates for folks on this call and for the project team is that the project is on time and on track. So that is always good news with construction. And we've moved from the first phase into the second phase of the construction timeline that was shown on the previous slide. So crews are working on Stewart Street from Dry Gulch to 14th Avenue at this point. And access to Wells Place and Stewart Street below 13th Avenue will reopen later this month. Additionally, east-west use of the intersection at Stewart Street and 13th Avenue will be restored in early May. And work is continuing north on Stewart Street as well. The section of road between 13th and 14th Avenues, including the intersection at Stewart Street and 14th Avenue, will remain closed through the early summer. Next slide, Sherry. And here is the contact information for the Stewart Street Storm Project. With that, Ryan, do you have any additional information that you wanted to share with the group today?
I'll just add that because it comes up to Colfax, and we talked earlier about the Colfax Pedestrian Improvements Project, there won't be any, our project's going to be done by the time that project gets to Stewart. So there won't be other entanglements for the folks who are already experiencing that on that street. And also mention there's been a lot of utility work around that are very individual one-off projects. So for example, on Stewart Street between 14th and Colfax, and that's going away, but that's not part of our projects. It's just making a lot feel like in that neighborhood, it makes it feel like there's a lot going on.
Yeah, and I feel like that is always the challenge with these public improvement projects is that there's a lot of different agencies kind of implementing changes. So definitely a good thing to highlight the kind of role clarification with the different. Any questions? I see Carlos in the chat. When we say projects, does that include the median and storm drains or only the storm drain?
So specifically on this project, it is, there's no median that we're working on, but we're doing curbs and gutters on all sides of the intersections, including the south side of Colfax. So our project is improving a lot so that it's ADA compliant, and then also just the storm drain underneath Stewart Street.
Carlos, did that get at what you were asking? Okay, perfect. Any other questions for the Stewart Street Storm Improvement Project? right. All right, next slide. So that's the end of the content that we prepared for the meeting this evening. Our next CAG meeting, our next quarterly CAG meeting is scheduled right now. The regular schedule would have it on July 4th, 2024, but of course that is a holiday, a federal holiday. So we're looking at potentially moving that to the Thursday of the second week of July. So we'll be sending out information about that shift when we finalize those details. In the meantime, we are going to be sending out a new version of the newsletter for the West Area Community Advisory Group to the distribution group for this CAG. So there's about 150 different kind of contacts that we continuously kind of keep up to date through our list that we maintain. And we'll be pushing out some kind of written updates to try to reach folks who don't necessarily have capacity to attend these in-person meetings or watch the full videos. Certainly want to make sure that there's some more kind of immediate content that folks can glance at and take away some good updates on. Irene, I see your hands up.
Hi, thank you. Hey, thank you for, doing this and doing what you're doing, Chris. We appreciate it. And I just wanted to say that, I don't know who else here is from the community, but I know Heidi and I are here, we're engaged. We're very, excited to work in partnership with, with Dottie on improvements for the neighborhood. And we really want to be partners, and we don't want it to be adversarial. And it feels that way so much of the time. So that's all I got to say. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's such an important piece of kind of growing and making sure that we're responsive to community needs and desires. I feel like the CAG itself is kind of an indication that, we're really trying to kind of experiment with new ways to make information and feedback opportunities and partnership more accessible to folks. And I think that there's a lot of good work to be done in the future. And yeah, I mean, some friction in that growth process is certainly expected, but never want to get it to the point where it feels adversarial. So I'm looking forward to kind of checking in at our next CAG meeting on kind of how we're functioning and how we can improve that aspect of it. Awesome. Any other last questions, comments to address this evening? All right. Well, just want to say thank you for all of you who are attending live during the meeting this evening. I know that you are taking time and energy to show up and learn about some pretty important pieces of your community. So just want to applaud that and say thank you. As always, please feel free to reach out to either Rolando or myself with any questions. And of course, the individual project managers or project contacts in the meantime. With that, I think we'll close the meeting for this evening. So have a great rest of your week and have a great weekend, everyone. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chris.
Bye.